I rise to speak in support of the member for Newcastle's motion to recognise International Women's Day, noting that its theme in 2024 is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. In doing so, I acknowledge several recent pieces of legislation which have addressed gender inequity in this country. These bills have improved the cost of childcare, invested in women's safety, improved pay and conditions in feminised industries, increased paid parental leave and, most recently, added a 12% superannuation contribution to PPL for the first time. And along with my independent colleagues, I've been pushing the government to act on gender equity in this country. We have all been extremely supportive of this legislative program. However, the residual gender pay gap of 12% is still 12% too much. We have to continue to work to place men and women in this country on an equal economic and social footing. Speaker, around the same time that the HECS student loan program was introduced in 1989, several traditionally feminised professions, like teaching and nursing, were absorbed into the university system. They immediately became much more expensive to study. Furthermore, degrees like teaching, nursing and social work often require hundreds of hours of unpaid work placements to complete. In contrast, male-dominated trade apprenticeships, which have stayed in the vocational education and training system, are paid. In fact, they often attract government subsidies and even fee-free places. 35 years on, more and more Australians have HECS debts which they are struggling to pay off. Those challenges are greater for women. While the average male HECS debt is higher than the average female HECS debt, most men earn higher incomes as soon as they graduate, and they repaid their HECS debts much more quickly than women. To make things more difficult, in 2019 the Morrison government lowered the salary threshold at which compulsory help repayments kicked in. 64% of those newly required to pay their HECS debts were women. And because repayments are calculated as a percentage of total income, not as a percentage of income above the threshold, those HECS repayments increase significantly even with small increases in income. That challenge is then exacerbated by the loss of supports like the family tax benefit at around the same time that the higher tax rates, HECS and the Medicare levy kick in. Not to mention that the APRA now recommends that HECS debts be undertaken and taken into account when assessing suitability for car and home loans. How this ends up is that of those with student debts, 60% of women, and women hold 58% of the total debt. Teachers and nurses, both from female-dominated professions, carry the biggest repayment burden of any group in our society. Women generally have lower-paying jobs. It takes us longer to repay our HECS debts, and our repayment periods are often extended by parental leave periods. Indexation of HECS debts during those extended repayment periods adds insult to injury. Futurity, an independent finance company, recently reported that more than 2/3 of university graduates have HECS debts into their 30s. 51% are still paying off their HECS debt in their 40s. Almost 60% of people report that their debt affects their ability to buy a home. 16% of young adults say that they are unable to afford medical and dental treatments because of their HECS debt. Speaker, the HECS system is actively exacerbating structural financial inequities in this country. We know what needs doing. Firstly, and most urgently, we have to modify how HECS debts are indexed. We have to ensure that HECS debts are changed, so the repayments are changed so that they're on the marginal income, like our income tax system. And we have to stop banks from considering them in the same light as other forms of our debt. If this government is serious about addressing and remediating gender inequity, it needs to ensure that our tax and our education systems don't disadvantage women who are trying to nurture their careers at the same time that they're trying to nurture their families.